Hey everyone, welcome back to Notice This. If you work in construction, you've probably heard people say things like just send a prelim, file a lien, send a notice of intent, but there are actually a lot more notices than just those three, and each one helps play a different key role in helping you protect your right to get paid. So today we are breaking down the most common construction notices, what they do, and why they matter. If you're a contractor, subcontractor, or supplier, understanding these notices is extremely important because missing one deadline can mean losing your right to collect payment, and no one wants that. Some of these notices protect your rights, some apply pressure to get paid, and others just provide important project information. So let's walk through the most common ones you'll see in the construction industry. Starting off strong with the preliminary notice. This is one of the most important documents in construction. This notice is typically sent at the beginning of the project to let the property owner and other parties know that you are providing labor, materials, or services. Think of it as an introduction. You are introducing yourself to the project. In many states, sending a preliminary notice is actually required in order to preserve your right to file a mechanic's lien later. If you skip it, you may completely lose your lien rights. So just don't do that. But even in states where it isn't required, it's still a great tool to send because it puts everyone on notice that you're involved on the project. And interestingly enough, contractors who send preliminary notices tend to get paid faster because everyone knows that they are tracking their rights and no one wants a lien filed. Number 2 is the collection letter. This one is not required, but a collection letter is usually the first step when payment becomes overdue. It's more like a friendly reminder that payment has not been received. It's not threatening legal action, it's simply a professional notice that payment is outstanding, and it's just good to keep in record. Many times, this alone can solve the issue because invoices get lost, approvals get delayed, or accounting department gets backed up sometimes. So a collection letter can often resolve payment issues without escalating things further. Number 3 is the notice of intent to lien, and this is like a step up from the collection letter. This document tells the parties involved that if payment is not received within a certain time frame, then you intend to file a mechanic's lien. And this is actually required in some states before you are even allowed to file a mechanic's lien. This is often one of the most effective documents you can send. Why? Because once owners and general contractors realize a lien could be coming, then they usually want to resolve the issues quickly before it affects the property or project. So many payment disputes are resolved before a lien is ever filed, simply because this notice was sent. Now moving on to the mechanic's lien. A mechanic's lien is also one of the strongest payment tools in construction. This is a recorded legal claim against the property itself for unpaid labor or materials. So once it's filed, the lien becomes part of the property's public record. This can create serious problems for the property owner because it affects refinancing, selling the property, and even closing on construction financing. That is why when liens often get filed, they get attention very quickly. However, lien laws are very strict and deadline driven, so it is extremely important that they are filed correctly and on time. Number 5 is the Miller Act notice. The Miller Act applies to federal construction projects. Because federal property cannot have a mechanic's lien filed against it, the government requires payment bonds instead. So subcontractors, suppliers must send a Miller Act notice if they are unpaid and want to preserve their right to make a claim against the payment bond. This typically, it must be sent within 90 days of last providing labor or materials, and that's pretty statewide. Without it, you could lose your ability to pursue payment from surety. Next is a claim on bond, which is like a Miller Act but for public projects. So a claim on bond is similar to a lien also, but it applies to bonded projects, typically public works. So instead of placing a claim against the property, you're making a claim against the payment bond provided by the general contractor. So the bond acts as a financial guarantee that subcontractors and suppliers will be paid. If payment isn't received, then a claim can be filed with the surety, and that issues the bond. So this is the primary payment protection for public construction projects. So do not miss out on it. Number 7 is the notice of commencement. A notice of commencement is typically filed by only the property owner or general contractor at the beginning of a project. And this document officially records the project information, property owner, general contractor information, lender information, project start date. So this notice has a lot of important information in it because it provides critical information that the subcontractors need when sending the preliminary notices or even filing liens. So in some states, the notice of commencement also starts the clock for certain legal deadlines. So if you're a GC, make sure you file one. Next is a notice of completion, and this is filed when the project is finished, mainly by GCs. So this notice is important because it actually shortens the deadline for contractors to file a mechanic's lien. For example, in some states, the lien deadline might be 90 days after completion, California for example, but once a notice of completion is filed, that window will shrink to 30 days. So if you are working on a project, it is always important to know whether a notice of completion has been recorded. Moving on to number 9, a notice of non-payment. A notice of non-payment is used to formally notify parties that payment has not been received. This document is often required in certain states, like Tennessee for example, and in order to preserve lien rights or claim bond rights. So it's more formal than a collections letter, and it's usually sent to multiple parties involved in the project. Sending this notice helps create a very clear record that payment is overdue and that you are just taking the steps to protect your rights. Number 10 is the stop payment notice. A stop payment notice is a valuable tool used in some states, like California. This notice tells the lender or construction fund holder to stop distributing funds on the project until the payment issue is resolved. In other words, it just freezes project funds. Because of that, it usually gets immediate attention. Owners and contractors typically want to resolve this very quickly so construction financing isn't distributed. So why these notices matter? At the end of the day, these notices exist for one reason: to protect the people doing the work and supplying the materials. Construction payment chains can be complicated and unfortunately delays can happen. But when you understand the notices that are available to you and you use them correctly, then you have a very, very powerful tool to protect your right to get paid. So if you're in construction, understanding these notices can make a world of a difference in how quickly you get paid and whether you can legally recover payment if things go wrong. So if you found this helpful, make sure you like the video and subscribe for more content about construction payment rights and best practices in each state. And as always, if it has been a while since you were paid, it might be time for another notice.